People, Michael. No, let's start. We're going to begin. Everybody should be already sitting down with their Gemara. I actually don't appreciate when people use these sheets as their Gemara because they really should use a Gemara, right? If there's what could I do?
What could I do?
How come I started and as soon as I start, a bunch of guys walked out?
It's a harm.
Huh?
It's a harm.
Because you bring a lot of kedusha and all, but
Yetzirah is like wants to run away. Huh?
You said Yaki. Did I do that?
What? No. Soon. Right now we're doing it in class. Is it something for the whole class or just for me? Huh? Well, it's gonna be for
my roommate. Just got engaged.
your room. Oh, Ben got engaged. Mazel tov.
Office machine.
Yeah, he actually was in YTD for a
I
little
know.
bit.
He told me specifically. He said, "Show this to Rabbi Kopel."
Oh yeah,
Sure.
Baruch Hashem. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Baruch Hashem. Everybody in the class. This is one of our former students. Just got engaged. This woman who I don't know who she is, but I'm sure if she was if he chose her, she must actually have some serious value because he's the top guy.
He studied in here, YT?
He studied in YTD. As a matter of fact, he was one of my first students. When I came, he was literally like one of the first students that I had. There was like 4 or 5 guys, and it was right after COVID, and the yeshiva was really struggling. I think there was a few guys. And as a matter of fact, when he came, he actually left very shortly afterwards because he felt that the people were not taking him. They were not taking Seder seriously. And he was actually one of my weapons because I realized to begin with when I came that I wanted this yeshiva had to be, like you had to keep Seder. It wasn't like, you just rocked up and did whatever the heck you wanted. No, you had to be part of the program, right? So when he left, I was like, I told Rabbi Pastor, you see, you're going to lose all the good guys. You're going to keep all the bums. You want to have a yeshiva with bums or yeshiva with good guys? If you have a yeshiva with bums, the good guys don't want to come. And if you have a yeshiva with good guys, the bums don't want to come. So who do you want to make a yeshiva for? The bums or the good guys, right? Guys. And he was one of the good guys. So, Be'ezrat Hashem, Baruch Hashem. All right. Now, I would like to continue from where we left off, which essentially, I believe so. Yeah. All right. Now, we basically concluded our discussion with Lahachzir Tanan or Lishis Tanan. Okay, we were wondering, is our Mishnah Lishis Tanan or Lahachzir Tanan? What was the conclusion, Yosef? What? You think I said what because I didn't hear what you said, or you think I said what because I didn't like what you said? Huh?
I said
No, you said Lahachzir Tanan. Huh? And either one is wrong because we concluded that it's inconclusive because we have 2 separate Mishnahs that each one seems to indicate the other way. He thinks it's funny. What's so funny? He's laughing. Huh? Wireless interference. All right. Anyways, let's get back to what we're saying quickly. Okay? We have a competition between the people in the class and the people online. We have to see who's listening more, right? We have people online. If they're there, they're probably listening because otherwise they would leave. If you're in class and you're not listening, then maybe I have more people listening to me online than I have here, which is not good. All right. We basically concluded that it's inconclusive, and we basically brought 2 different Tanaic statements that seem to indicate that. All right? Rav Sheishes. Nami diuko de masnisin komashmelon. Rav Sheishes, he's trying to teach you the diuk of the Mishnah. Now that seems like the Gemara just threw that in there But let's read Rashi. Mishum loy masni lo bahadei hakar mushari. Yeah, so this is actually going back on what Rabbi Shesa said to begin with. He basically said that if you had bread in the oven, yeah, if it crusted, you can leave it there, and if it did not crust, you cannot leave it there. Right? Now, if you look at the interesting details that came out throughout the last few days in this Gemara, we basically have, number one, there's the kira, that is not grufu ketuma. Are you allowed to leave something there from Friday to Shabbos? Or is it completely allowed? Right? Then we have a concept called Michael Bendroi Soy, which means partially cooked, but it is cooked, but it is
The famous thief.
the famous thief. He's probably the most famous thief in the history of mankind. Literally. There's a trivia for you if you ever. Who is the most famous thief in the history of mankind? Huh? No. Because he was not famous for being a thief. He was famous, not meaning who was the most famous as a thief.
He was a gangster, no?
Huh? Madoff? No. Right now, in this generation, Madoff is famous. Between me and you, in another 10, 20 years, no one's going to hear about Madoff. And if you go before Madoff, no one heard of Madoff. So he had this small window of history where a lot of people knew him, right? However, if you count throughout history, how many people knew about Ben Derisoy as a thief? It was a lot of people. Probably more than Madoff, probably more than all the other famous guys.
Should I Google it?
Who, Ben Derisoy? Do whatever you want. But not in the middle of class. All right? Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda. Now we're going to go on to something a little different. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda says Rabbi Shmuel bar Yehuda. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Kiro she'asikua begefes ube'etzim. A keto that was heated, that was lit up with gefes and eitzim, the olive pulp or the sesame pulp or branches. You're allowed to leave on it a fully cooked thing. And hot water that was fully heated. Even if it is mitstamek v'yafaloi. Now, we kind of dealt with this issue.
What's mid-stomach?
Mid-stomach, we had this earlier this week. It means it shrivels, it shrinks, I don't know what, somebody used to.
It cooks down.
Condenses, reduces. We could come up with a million different words. In Aramaic, it's very simple. Mid-stomach. That's it. Mid-stomach.
Cook it, it gets small. It's called reduction.
Reduction.
Encrustulation.
We're coming out with like a bunch of different words.
Caramelization.
Caramelization. What else? Anybody have some words for us over here? Huh? Computation. Huh? Congealed. Concealed. Huh?
Andy.
Yes, annealed.
Andy.
Concentrated. Oh, concentrated. Anyone else? Yeah, maybe somebody online has another word to throw at us. Here, if you, by the way, if you put any comment online, I get it straight to my computer over here. Yeah. Anyways, let's get back to what he said. All right. He basically says that even if it gets better, if it's fully cooked, you can leave it on the fire on Shabbos. Now, in order to begin to understand this Gemara, Rava basically concludes that there's two ways of seeing the Mishnah. Now, since there's two ways of seeing the Mishnah, so on one end, how do we say halachically? Halachically, if you have gefes and eitzim and you want to leave from Friday to Shabbos, there may be somewhat of an issue, right? You understand? So there may be an issue, there may be not an issue, but we have two versions. We don't know which version is correct, and therefore we have to kind of deal with both issues. However, Rabbi Shmuel says over here, was it Shmuel? Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Right? So if it's fully cooked, you're definitely allowed to leave food, even if it gets better when it goes better. All right? When it cooks. That is the opinion of Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Yeah? Amar le'ahu midrabanan. said to him, one of the rabbis. Now, who said to who? Who could tell me names? Who said to who? No. Who said to who?
Rabbi Yochanan.
Huh?
Rabbi Yochanan said to Rab.
Amar le'ahu mid Rabbanan le Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda. Not Rav Shmuel. Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda is a different person. Yeah? This person is basically trying to say mitztamek v'yafaloi mutter. That if it's fully cooked, even if it's going to get better by shrinking, it is mutter. Right? Now, somebody tells him as follows. He says, "Ho Rav Shmuel Damri Tarvayu." Both Rav and Shmuel. That's why I said Shmuel bar Yehuda and Shmuel are different people. Okay? Whenever we say Shmuel without telling you who his father is, he's one of the earlier sages of the Tanaic era.
Like
Rav and Shmuel were contemporaries.
Shmuel Gadol.
Huh?
Is the Shmuel Gadol if there's not the Shmuel Ben something?
Again, if you just hear Rav and Shmuel, then it's very specific people.
OG Shmuel.
If it says Rav Yehuda, then it's Rav Yehuda, it's not Rav. And if you have Shmuel bar Yehuda, it's Shmuel bar Yehuda and not Shmuel. Okay?
So
It's a different character.
He's just Shmuel.
Shmuel is actually a very famous and well-used Jewish name.
Yeah, so the first
He's
one
not
was
Some
Shmuel.
rabbi once even
Shmuel,
came to me.
Shmuel. What's with Shmuel and Shmuel?
Shmuel and Shmuel, generally the same name, just
Shmuel.
pronounced different. Shmuel is the proper name. Shmuel. Samuel in Hebrew is really Shmuel. Shmuel. Just like you have Michael. Who else do we have El at the end of their name?
So Shmuel is like
Anyone else?
way of saying
Yisrael. Right? The Aleph Lamed is actually God, and very often they put God into the name because they were praising or they were attributing something to God. Shmuel comes from the word Shema, which is here, and Kel is God, which is God heard her prayers. Chana called her Chana called her son Shmuel because she prayed and God heard her prayers, so she called her Shmuel.
What about the word Anael?
Huh?
Anael.
I don't know what that means. That word is.
Ana
Mechoel actually comes from the word. What is it?
Who is like Hashem? Micha. Mi kamocha.
Me.
comes from Mikvah. He's the one who went
No,
to
I know Raphael is healing. Gavriel is strength. What is
Michael.
Michael?
Who is like Hashem?
No, Gavura is Gavriel. Gavriel is Gavura. Gavriel is Gavura. Kale.
God.
What's Michael?
Chesed.
Who is
Huh?
like Hashem?
I don't know. We have to look it up.
Is
Yeah, you ever looked it up? You ever
Ana
thought
is
a lot about it? It's like who is like God?
Well, there's Israel.
It's a question.
Yeah.
Ana
All right.
Ana is answer.
Yeah.
So the Anael would be Hashem answer.
Right.
Okay.
You have have you heard somebody with that name
Yes.
before? Oh, you have?
Yes.
Good. Baruch Hashem.
Anael.
Good.
Wow.
Anyways, Shmuel was a very famous name throughout the Jewish history. It was one of the most famous names throughout the history. Most used names throughout history was Shmuel. Probably more than almost every other name that I could think of. Okay. And
Like the name Shmuel.
Stephen came to me and pointed out to me, it was actually one of these rebbes we were visiting when I was in Australia. You know, all these rebbes visit Australia to collect some money. They still do that, I'm assuming. No, they still come?
Yeah, not as much.
Not as much. When I was there, they had a lot of very big, famous. Like in Israel, they were like revered. In Australia, they were like, going around. Like, I felt bad for them because they. What do you mean? You can tell. Depends which ones, but some of them you can tell that they were used to being respected, right? So when they came to the yeshiva, I used to respect them. I speak to them, this and that. One of them actually comes. He tells me, "What's your name?" I tell him Shmuel. He says, "Where's the first place that it says Shmuel in the Torah?" So I said, "Shmuel HaNavi." He says, "No." He actually showed me that in the 5 books of Moses, there was somebody named Shmuel before Shmuel HaNavi. He showed me. I didn't even know. It was when in I think it's in Parshas Masi. Yeah, very old name. Yes.
An exact translation for this line, Amar
This of the rabbis, meaning this one of the rabbis said to. It's very confusing in English because Amar le hahu mid Rabbanan li Rav Shmuel said to him one of the rabbis to Rav Shmuel. Right? In English, you would say one. Hahu is like that rabbi, which is we don't. Yeah, it's kind of like that rabbi. What's that, Rabbi? Meaning, we don't know who he is, but he's a rabbi. That's it. He was one of the rabbis. We don't know who he is.
He's a rabbi.
He said, again, Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda seems to say in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that mitztamek v'yafaloi is mutter. If it gets better, you're still allowed to leave it on the fire. This rabbi tells Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, who quoted Rabbi Yochanan, he says, yeah, you're quoting Rabbi Yochanan, but what about Rav and Shmuel? Damri tavaya mitztamek v'yafaloi asur. They hold that it would be prohibited. Yeah. So, yeah. Good. Omar lay. So he said back to them, Atu leis ano yoda. Do you think I didn't know? The Omar Rav Yezim, Omar Rav Yehuda, Omar Shmuel, mitztamek v'yavas le osur. Ki kaminu lecha. What am I telling you? Rabbi Yochanan kaminu lecha. In other words, he was looking at this other rabbi. He says, I told you Rabbi Yochanan said it. You're telling me Rav and Shmuel said something else. Fine. I know that. Rabbi Yochanan says this, and they say that. Now, for those of you who are a little bit more intellectually gifted, all right, if you pay attention to what's going on here, something's up. Because Rabbi Yochanan earlier, he holds that you're allowed to leave anything on a fire from Friday to Shabbos. Whatever you want.
Yochanan.
Yeah. Even if it's not fully cooked.
What about it being banked on a grufta ketufta?
Then of course. But even if it was not grufta ketufta, he still lets you do it. So what's he trying to tell you here?
He's quite lenient.
Yeah, but here it's trying to tell you if it's fully cooked, you're allowed to leave it, which sounds like if it wasn't fully cooked, you're not allowed to leave it. But he already told you you're allowed to leave it even if it's not fully cooked. So how? So what is exactly being added to this conversation in this particular situation?
He's trying to tell us something.
I know he's trying. That's what I'm trying to tell you. He's trying to tell you something, but what is that something?
He said before that you can leave anything on the fire.
Yeah.
From and you can return it on the fire before Shabbat.
No, he says that if you want to leave it from Friday to Shabbos, you can leave it from Friday to Shabbos, no matter what, even if it's not fully cooked. That's what he says. Right? And then he says on Shabbos, if you want to take it and put it back, then it has to be gruft and ktuft from before Shabbos, because you can't gruf and ktuf on Shabbos. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
No gruffing and ktufing.
Yeah.
On Shabbos.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But over here, he says if it's fully cooked, you can leave it. But hold on a second. Even if it's not fully cooked, you can leave it. So what's he trying to say?
What is he not saying that he is saying? What is he not saying that he's actually saying?
What is he saying here? He seems to be contradicting his own opinion previously in the name of Rav Sheshes.
There's something that he's saying that we're not hearing. He's saying something else.
I don't know. Perhaps.
There is text that is not telling us an information. It's what is not being written that is the message to us. So what is the negative space that we're not hearing?
As a matter of fact, I'm going to teach you a Kabbalistic secret right now, if you're willing to handle it. It actually says, not just the Kabbalists, but even the people in the Gemara, whatever they revealed, I think they said it was like 10 times more they didn't reveal, they hid. Right? So whatever information is obvious in the Gemara, there is a whole load of information that you need to figure out through that's not obvious. It's kind of like hidden behind the words.
That's life. You look at someone, most of them, even physically, is concealed.
This guy's concealed.
Everyone.
I see you.
You just see the skin. You don't see.
I see your beard.
You don't see most of what's going on.
Yeah, you can't see his chin.
You just see the superficial. You just see the outside.
Right.
Everything inside, which is most of what's going on, you don't see that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
fair enough.
So it's the same principle with like everything.
All right.
He did it intentionally.
Yeah.
Stuff.
What's that? Tarvayu means both of them. Both of them. Yeah. Tarvayu. Ha is like this that they said. Ha is a very interesting how it's used. I cannot necessarily tell you in English how it's used, but it is. All right. So basically, we have a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan, who says that if it congeals, it doesn't make any difference, and we have Rav and Shmuel that says if it congeals and gets better, you're not allowed to do it. right? Omar late Rav Ukva Mimeshon. Rav Ukva from Meshon says to Rav Ashi, Atun, you, the Mekarvisu Rav Shmuel, you that are very close to the land of Rav and Shmuel, Aviduk Rav and Shmuel, you should do like Rav and Shmuel. Anan, us, Navid Rabbi Yochanan, we in Israel will do like Rabbi Yochanan. So here you actually have a very interesting precedent set in the Gemara, right? That if there's two rabbis that are arguing, you should follow the rabbi of your place. Why? Because God's revelation comes through the rabbis. And sometimes there's a different revelation in a different place, just like different place has different climate, right? And the world operates differently in Israel than it does in Antarctica, obviously, by far. And therefore, there could be a different type of godly revelation that's relevant to one place and not necessarily relevant to the other place. Or vice versa. As a matter of fact, there's a story of the Baal Shem Tov. You heard of the Baal Shem Tov?
No, never.
The founder of Hasidus. Baal Shem Tov said as follows. All right? The Baal Shem Tov, once somebody came to him and told him that he had a particular disease. And he came to the Baal Shem Tov for blessing and advice in order to be healed from this particular disease. And the Baal Shem Tov told him to go to a very particular place, a very particular city, in a very particular land, and it was actually far away. And he listened and he traveled to that faraway land, and sure enough, he got healed. Curiously, at some point, he came to visit the Baal Shem Tov, and he asked the Baal Shem Tov, why did I have to go to Lela? Why couldn't I be healed over here? I could have been, why'd I have to go over there? So the Baal Shem Tov said, listen, when you told me what disease you have, I remember that this exact disease is being discussed in Halacha, same exact disease, and there is whether it is considered, whether it makes an animal treif. If an animal has a particular disease, a malfunction, a blemish, a wound, a mum, that it would die from in a relatively short period of time, some people say 30 days, some people say a year, that animal is no longer kosher. And it's called treifa. Now, this particular disease that this guy had is one of the diseases that is discussed in halacha as being treif. And the Baal Shem Tov says, I looked at what's the rule, because I needed to know if the guy's going to live or going to die, because if it's treif, he's going to die. If it's kosher, he's going to live. So I looked up the rule, and I saw that there was a machlokes. There's one opinion that says that this is treifa. And there's one opinion that says that it's not treifa. And I said, where is the opinion that it's treif? The opinion is held halachically in the Ashkenazi world in Europe. And where do they say it's kosher? That was in some Sephardi community somewhere far away. And I said that if you stay in the place where your disease is treif, he's going to die. Because that's the halacha. But if he goes to the place where they hold that this wound, this thing is not treif, which means that the animal could live.
Which means that he will live.
That means he could live. Right?
That's the Baal Shem Tov answer.
Yeah. And that's why he sent him to the other place. And why am I saying this? Because that's essentially what the Gemara is saying over here, is this Rabbi, Rav Ukva Mimeshon. He was from a place called Meshon, and in his place, he was much closer to the land of Rabbi Yochanan. And was Rav Sheshes? I think it was Rav Sheshes. Yeah. Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi was closer to the land of Rav and Shmuel, and he says, therefore, you must do like Rav and Shmuel. Okay, so when somebody tells you to follow your local rabbi, it's very important to follow your local rabbi and not to do contrary to your local rabbi.
Well, your local rabbi is the rabbi where you came from.
Says who?
That's why I'm asking. Is it
Didn't sound like a question.
Came from? Well, it was meant to be a question.
Oh, it was meant to be a question. Okay.
So you follow the rabbi who you come from, or do you follow the rabbi who's in your new place?
If you're in a place, you follow the rabbi of the place. It's called Mord Asra. You're supposed to follow the rabbi of your place, right?
What does the asra mean?
The asra is of the land. Mora is like the master. Mora the asra, the master of
So
the
who is
land.
the Mora de Asra of Sfas?
Oh, so the Mora the Asr of Tzfas, I can tell you the Mora the Asr of the Chabad community in Tzfas is Rabbi Bistritsky.
Huh?
Rabbi Bistritsky.
Oui.
He is the Chabad rabbi of Tzfas. We also have the chief rabbi, according to the Zionist regime, is Rabbi Shmuel Kopel. And the reason I say that is because I'm not sure if he can be considered the Mora the Asr because he was appointed. He was appointed by who? Right? If you know that a lot of things in Israel are very undemocratic, right? A lot of things. Okay, those who think it's a democratic state, welcome to reality. It's not, right? There's a lot of things where you get appointed. There's some people that somehow have the right to appoint people to certain things, and that's that.
It's the only democratic state in the Middle East.
It's not a democratic state. It's the closest thing to a democratic state in the Middle East. It's close. It's close. There's aspects of the government of Israel that are democratic, but there's definitely aspects that aren't. And by the way, if you go to the secular society, they always point out the undemocratic parts of the religious side, right? And in the religious society, put the undemocratic sides of the other ones because there are a lot of issues. And one of the things are basically the rabbinate in Israel, which is completely, I mean, who gave some rabbis the right? How did they have a halachic right to appoint a rabbi? Right? I'm a Torah Rabbani, a rabbinic attorney. There's a Beis Din of Tzfas, which mandate their authority over anybody in this area. Who appointed them? A couple rabbis that happen to be, no, they have committees, but these committees are, I don't know if you know, I'm not going to get into politics here. Yosef, get your head off the table. Sheesh. Pick up your head. Hey. I don't know if you know too much about this, but I don't want to get into politics, but there's a big controversy been going on for a while regarding the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court essentially the way that they basically appoint themselves, right? There was people appointed like when they started the Supreme Court, and even though officially there's some votes that are given to the political echelon, but majority of the votes basically are theirs. So basically they basically get to decide who's going to be the next Supreme Court leader, which is totally undemocratic. There is no other democratic state that I know of where the judges get to appoint the judges, who get to appoint the judges, who get to appoint the judges, who get to appoint the judges. Even in America, as a matter of fact, the Supreme Court, no judge, the judges don't have any power to appoint anybody in the Supreme Court. They don't. It's you have I think if I'm not mistaken, the president has to nominate, and then the Senate has to confirm, and then they're in, right? And Israel doesn't work like that. They basically appoint themselves, and they basically make up their own rules too, right? But again, so a lot of people complain, oh, this is a problem with the Supreme Court. It's not a problem with the Supreme Court. It's a problem with the whole setup of how the Israeli government was set up. There's a lot of things that are not that are literally not in the control of the average person. You cannot control them. There's no legal way of changing it. Right? The only real way would be if there was such an uproar that the people, like, for example, recently, Netanyahu wanted to fire the head of the Shabbat. If it was in America, he would sign a paper, Trump would sign a paper, and the guy would be gone. Over here, the guy went to the Supreme Court, who are basically undemocratically elected. They're not elected, period. They're appointed.
They're independent.
And actually, as a matter of fact, the stupidity of the Israeli leftists is that they say that this is actually how to protect democracy by not being democratic. They actually make that argument. They say Supreme Court has to be independent judiciary. Sounds very cool, right? It sounds right? But show me one other democratic country that has that. There's no democratic country that basically says that there's people who get to appoint their own positions, and no one has any power to stop them. They can by the way, in Israel, the Supreme Court, the head of the Supreme Court could go shoot somebody in the head, and there's no legal way to arrest him, because he could just basically say, I was allowed to do it. And there is no legal ramifications in Israel. If the Supreme Court go kill somebody in public for no reason whatsoever, there is no legal way to stop him from doing it. I mean, unless majority of his colleagues go against him. That's the only thing. Meaning, if majority of the Supreme Court decide to put him in jail, fine. But if the majority of the Supreme Court decides to back him up, there's zero zilcho. You should see, if you see what's going on. Now, again, I'm not pointing this out to make a political statement. I'm pointing this out to explain to you the concept of the Mara Asra of in Israel. In Israel, when they made the state, they basically appointed the people to positions in ways, maybe by accident. It might have been by accident that they did this way. But many people have many positions that are literally the democratically elected government have no way of dealing with it. And that's why in Israel we have crazy bureaucracy, because the government cannot change it. I'm telling you, you think I'm stupid. The reason why if the government had the ability to change it, they would have, but they can't, so they don't. And but the fact is that a lot of the insanity that some of you experienced, all right, I experienced a lot of this. A lot of people experience it, right? It's because that's unfortunately Israel is not built on a purely democratic platform. Right? If it was, these things would have been changed by the politicians because they would have the pressure. As a matter of fact, if you know Bennett was actually elected his first time. He went around saying how he's going to chop up bureaucracy. He was going to make it that much easier. And then when he got into office, people asked him, what did you do? You know what he said? He said, I can't do anything about it. That's what he said. He was elected for that reason. He said, I can't do anything about it. Right? And it's, again, the reason I pointed out the Supreme Court, because it's a very obvious case, but this concept exists. The rabbinate in Israel, the chief rabbi of Israel. Who the hell said he's the chief rabbi of Israel? Who made him the chief rabbi of Israel? There's a committee of rabbis. And by the way, this committee, in order to get onto the committee has to basically put you onto the committee. Right? And that's it.
It's like the Sanhedrin.
It's not, no, it is like the Sanhedrin, but the difference is that the Sanhedrin was actually appointed by Moses through God. So they actually had a godly, divine power to them, right? But this is how Israel operates in many different things. I'll give you an example. We just had our concert, right? We had a concert here in Tzfas on the top, right? You were there? Yeah. We had this concert. Okay, Rabbi Pasternak wanted to get permits. You know who has the right to give the permits? The city council is the one that has the right to give us permits. They are the official democratically elected people that are allowed to give the permits, right? Somebody in the office was basically, you came in too late, you missed our deadline, and we're not doing it, right? We're not giving you the permits because of whatever reason, right? Rabbi Pasternak went all the way to the mayor, and by the way, it happens to be that the city council right now, there's a few Chabad guys on it, the mayor, which is already, there's actually, you need 7. So you have 2 Chabad guys, and the mayor's already 3, and a lot of the other guys, I'm sure, would have allowed it, right? But the bureaucrats told the mayor, I'm sorry, you can't do that. Excuse me, he's democratically elected. He's the one that,
councils don't run the council. It's the council officers that actually run it.
And who appointed them?
The CEO.
Who appointed them?
CEO.
You know, that's not democracy. That's not democracy.
No, it is
again
in a roundabout way.
It's not democratic. If the public, if the people don't have the power to override decisions of anybody in the government, then it's not a purely democratic situation. And again, every country has issues. Every democracy has some issues with this. But usually, in most countries, like if the democratically elected people really wanted to do something about it, they could. In Israel, they can't.
Wow.
Anyways, why am I saying this? Because we spoke about who's the head rabbi of Tzfas. So just because he happens to have the position of chief rabbi of Tzfas doesn't necessarily mean he has the halachic status of the Mara Asra. He happens to be a holy Jew, and I respect him. And I would definitely respect his opinion. But if somebody came to me and said that he made a ruling, do I have to follow it as him being the chief rabbi of Tzfas? I would say no.
The Lubavitcher Rebbe is the chief rabbi of Tzfas.
Yeah, the rabbi is chief.
What is the Shadim condense? The
Shodayim.
What does that mean? Demons condense?
No. Shodayim. Shodayim are like beans. Beans.
Oh, like refried beans.
Yeah, they condense. Anyways, I don't know how I got into that political rant over here, but
so
yeah.
Rashi's just describing what condensation is?
I don't know. No, is it? No, sorry. He's actually bringing a quote. He's bringing a quote from Tanakh where they use the word tzomkin for shrinking. And it says over here, Aleph.
Oh, it's like it gets what's the word? It's like When you cook something.
It could also be, I don't know, it could be kidneys. I don't know what it is. Go look it up in Tanakh. Look it up in Tanakh. Anyways, so
Reducing. It's like you reduce it.
yeah. Anyways, let's continue. So we have over here again. We have Rav Ukva basically says you guys are closer to this rabbi and he's closer to that rabbi, and etc. In other words, what I was trying to say about the rabbis, just to kind of like close it out, is that a rabbi of a place has to be somewhat accepted by the public. Now, it could be through elections, and the Rebbe actually spoke about this in Crown Heights when they had elections for a Beis Din of Crown Heights. And that itself is saying, okay, majority rules, and therefore they are accepted by the public through the majority consensus, which actually is a Jewish concept, right? Otherwise, sometimes a rabbi is appointed, and it's just like, no, and everybody's like accepted him. If you look around in Chabad, in the Chabad community in Sfas, people accept Rabbi Bistritsky as the Rav of the community. Why? Really, his father was sent as the Rav of the community by the Rebbe, and therefore, obviously, they accepted him. And then when his father passed away, they appointed him in his father's place, and he's pretty much accepted. The community accepts him, right? And if the community accepts him, then he becomes the rabbinic authority. And if they don't, then he's not. Right? Over here, apparently in the place of Rav and Shmuel, they basically revered Rav and Shmuel and they followed him. In the place of Rav Yochanan, the same thing with him. And therefore, it's you must follow that thing. Okay, good. Continue. Good. Can I know? Rabbi says to Rav Yosef, Mahu Lishos. Are you allowed to leave from some food on the fire from Friday to Shabbos? Are you allowed to leave it? Right? In other words, we had the whole discussion prior. Is our Mishnah Lishosnan or is our Mishnah Lahachsutnan? Rava came and told us that there is Mishnahs that back up each opinion. There seems to be Rabbi Yochanan that holds Lahachsutnan. Rav and Shmuel, it's not so clear what they hold, but it seems like they might hold a little different than Rabbi Yochanan, right? So Abaye basically says, well, what's the final rule? So we're going to have a bit of a discussion. What do you think the final rule is? Yeah? Amar Lei said, Ha Rav Yehuda, Mashu. He says Rav Yehuda himself used to leave on the stove even without doing Grufa Ketuma, and he even ate it. So that is proof, right? Oh, I've actually spoken about this in the past, but I think we should say this as well again. Okay, rabbis in the time of the Gemara were extremely precise individuals. Okay, not only were they expected to know every halacha that existed, they were also expected to follow it. Unlike Aristotle, there's a story with Aristotle that one time his students found him going against his own morals. Reuven, sit up like a mensch. Huh? You're laying down. You're not sitting down. Sit down. Where am I? I got lost. Aristotle was once found doing something contrary to his own moral code. And his student says, how could you do this? It's against your moral code. And he said, right now, I'm not Aristotle. In other words, he did not practice what he preached. Okay? However, the rabbis were known that they did practice what they preached. Okay? The rabbis were seriously into what they learned in every halacha, and they practiced what they preached. Since they practiced what they preached, if you saw a rabbi do something, you could assume that his halachic opinion allows it. So Rav Yosef, Abai asked Rav Yosef, are you allowed to leave it on a fire that's not Grufa Ketuma from Friday to Shabbos? And Rav Yosef answers him, I could tell you for a fact that Rabbi Yehuda himself used to eat from the food that was left on a fire. And that would seem to prove that Rabbi Yehuda's opinion would allow it, because if he didn't allow it, he wouldn't have done it.
Would the rabbis, right, let's see with Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Meir, would Rabbi Meir not put out hot food because the halacha goes like Rabbi Huda?
Generally, once a halacha was properly established, everybody followed it. The only question is was a halacha properly established in the time of the Sanhedrin, like Yosef and Michael? No, we just had the whole discussion yesterday about the Sanhedrin. In the time of the Sanhedrin, they would get together and they would have a vote amongst the 71 elders, and majority would win. 71. What is 70 divided by 2? Yeah, how could you have an even number in a Sanhedrin? Huh? It doesn't work like that. Sorry. You had an odd number so that you could always have majority. All right? Now, in the time of the Sanhedrin, when there was an argument between two rabbis, it would go to the Sanhedrin and the Sanhedrin would resolve it. That's why Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel actually lived in the time of the Sanhedrin. That's why we can tell you that the halach is always like Beis Hillel, except for a list of exceptions. Right? Because every time that they voted for Beis Hillel's opinion, except one day. There's a story about it. There was one day where the students of Shammai, for whatever they realized that they were majority, right? And there was a story. I think they stuck a sword in the ground, and they said, "No one leaves." And they pushed as many. It sounds very political. You have to, when you have a when you win. No. Sometimes you have in politics when like one side wins an election, but they're not sure if they're going to win the next one, so they just rush in to try to make as many laws as they could, right? This happened in the time of the Sanhedrin too, right? And this happened with Abaye. So there was one day where Abaye's followers were majority, and they pushed as many laws as they could. I think there was 18. I think there was 18 halachas that they pushed on that day, and they never had it again. It was only one day they had it, no other days. And that's why everywhere we go, according to Beis Hillel, except for those exceptions that they pushed on one day, till today. Why? Because it was the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin is the boss, and then they vote. That's the way it is.
Like what?
Like what? Like what?
Well, what were the things that we still have to put up with because they got them through on
They
that one?
putting up with listening to a great master like Beis Shammai.
Sorry. What are the things that we still have that was instituted on that day?
I don't remember. There's a list. There's actually a Mishnah with a whole list. All right. Good. Where are we? Oh, so Rav Yosef basically, Abaye asked Rav Yosef, "Are you allowed to leave from Friday to Shabbos?" He basically says, "I saw that Rabbi Yehuda left it and ate it as well." Seems to prove that that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, and Rav Yosef is trying to use Rabbi Yehuda's opinion to establish the halacha. Amar lei, Abaye retorted to Rav Yosef. He says, "Bar minei de Rabbi Yehuda, exclude this of Rabbi Yehuda. The kivon de mesukanu afilu b'Shabbos nami shori." Rabbi Yehuda was actually misukan, which means he was in danger. He was not feeling well. He was a person that had a disease. He was sick, and therefore says Abaye that Rabbi Yehuda was allowed to eat everything. Yeah. In other words, he says even if it was cooked on Shabbos, that's what he says. Even if it was cooked on Shabbos, he would be allowed to eat it because he was in danger. He was sick. Basically, do not include. You cannot use Rabbi Yehuda as a reference because maybe we don't know. Again, Rav Yosef basically says, "I think that this is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion because I actually saw him eat from the food that was left from Friday to Shabbos." And Abaye says, you cannot use that as a proof because even if it was cooked on Shabbos, Rabbi Yehuda would be allowed to eat it because he was in danger. And therefore, the fact that he ate it from before Shabbos is no proof to what. And by the way, if he ate it from before Shabbos, is it usher according to the Torah, Yaakov? If he ate from the food that was left from Friday to Shabbos, would he have been breaking the Torah?
No.
What would he be breaking?
Nothing.
No. I'm saying if it was prohibited.
Yeah.
Lou, what are the 4.5 things we spoke about yesterday?
Shabbos, nothing.
Yeah. What was the first rabbinical one?
First rabbinical one was the establishment.
Great, Gezerah.
The Gezerah. Remember, I told you that whenever you're learning a Gemara, you have to make sure you understand what's going on. Now, our Gemara, the whole reason why you perhaps, according to the opinion that says you can't leave from Friday to Shabbos, the whole reason is we're afraid you're going to stoke the coals. So if a guy is sick and he knows that he's allowed to eat brand new cooked food on Shabbos. Now, if you cook brand new food on Shabbos, that's definitely breaking the Torah because it's one of the 39 melachas is cooking.
Yeah.
Right? So he has a choice. He could either cook new food or perhaps he could be breaking a rabbinic decree, which the rabbinic decree is because he may be breaking Shabbos. What do you think he should eat?
The rabbinic thing.
So therefore, Abai is saying because he was sick and he was even allowed to eat the one on Shabbos, perhaps the reason why he ate that food was because he made a kineh. He says, well, should I eat food that was literally breaking biblical commandment or should I eat food that was breaking a rabbinic commandment? I would rather break a gezerah than break the Torah. And therefore, perhaps, we don't know. And since that Rabbi Yehuda was in the situation where he could have ate on Shabbos because he was in danger, because he was sick, therefore, Abaya says you cannot use that as precedence.
So how did Abai know who was sick and the other guy didn't know who was sick? Guy who actually saw him.
Good question. Good question. So the guy that actually saw him knew he was sick, but apparently thought that he held that way anyways.
Rabbi Gezerah is a decree.
Yeah.
That is for the protection of the Torah law.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like a fence.
Correct.
Why don't
Yeah.
they just call it a gedder?
It's called a gezerah. Zell. So let me just finish here and we'll do this. Libelach mai, Omar Le, he says, Besura Mashu, he says in Surah, there was a place, Surah was an inn, was a place, a city in Babylonia. One of the big cities in Babylonia was called Surah. And he says in Surah, everybody actually leaves from Friday to Shabbos. Why? The Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Mori de Uvda Hava, Umashu Leiva Achel. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, who was a great Mori de Uvda, was a master of action, which means that he was very particular on what he did, and he would leave. So it seems to here that we're paskening that you are allowed to leave from Friday to Shabbos, even without Gerufa Uktuma. Right? I'm getting the feeling, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm getting the feeling that everybody is looking at me as if they're listening and understanding, but I'm getting the feeling that some of you are not understanding, at least some of you.
Chochmah bin Adas.
Yeah?
So the mind controls the heart.
Can I ask?
It's not thine issue.
Ask for like a tip in learning tomorrow. Because we bounce from opinion to opinion and subject to subject so quickly. So how do you keep track of like?
So I'm going to tell you how I personally learned Gemara. I would read the Gemara, not know what it was talking about, and then read it again. And I'm going to tell you that rereading something a second time, you have no idea what's flying, is physically, emotionally painful. And you know what I did after I read it the second time?
You read it
The third time. And if you think the second time was painful, the third time was even more painful. And then after I read it 4 or 5 times, it slowly started cracking, and I'm like, whoa. And by the way, you should know, I still do that. There was a very difficult Tosfos. I literally read it over 3, 4 times, and each time I'm reading it, I don't know, and I'm not getting it. And after a few times, you get it.
It would be so nice if this were formatted with like multi-level index. So like, okay, we're within this sub-question, and now we've gone.
Oh, and Merkava has that.
So, yes, there are various, I'm going to tell you, there are various sites and apps that have this, and they try to organize it for you. And I'm going to tell you that I have a very big question in my mind. I believe that the Gemara did it deliberately, because the Gemara felt that if you learn it in this way, it will teach you how to be a better human being and more capable human being. Right? In life, they don't organize things. Right? You have a question in life. What is the quickest way to make $1 billion? Are you going to go on a website on ChatGPT and it'll tell you? No. No, it's not. You're going to have to figure it out yourself. You're going to have to look at other people, compare things, delve into things, analyze things, etc. And then maybe, if you're lucky enough, you'll actually come to the right method by yourself, right? And I think that the Gemara did this intentionally because it felt that if it wrote it in the other way, it would not be helping you as a human being become closer to God. Because in order to come closer to God, you must, even come closer. You think, oh, God's simple, I still remember I was in New Zealand and I was walking down the street and some old lady somehow, I don't know why, she's like, oh, you're Jewish. Because it wasn't that many Jewish people there. So she showed me a kippah. Oh, you're Jewish? I said, yeah. So she says, oh, you people don't believe in so-and-so. And I'm like, okay, fine with me. And she says, oh, she said something like how idiotic, how could you not believe in so and so, how could that be? And so I asked her, I said, well, why do you believe in so and so? She says, what? It's so obvious. When I was 12 years old, I realized that this had to be true. So I asked her, I said, how many other things did you decide when you're 12 years old that you still think are true? She couldn't find. I'm talking about a lady in her 80s. She she couldn't think of another one, right? Figured out at 12 and you stuck with it. Yeah, square. Right? Why am I telling you this?
So what, she just then you just walked off?
Huh? No, she really didn't have an answer. She did kind of walk off. She was like, she didn't have anything to say. It was like,
because you're going outside of her shtick into a slightly different thing.
Yeah.
Come from a different perspective, just with the actual real world. You weren't tackling it directly. It was a roundabout with something else, and just
She's like, what? Belief is actually supposed to be real? I thought this is just a makeup thing. No, it's really, people don't realize how much they don't believe in what they say they believe in. Right? And when you ask them these questions, it kind of shakes them. Hey, maybe I don't really believe in this stuff.
With Mashiach, that's a totally different topic. Because if you believe Mashiach's coming now, yes. All right. I'll make you a bet of $100.
Yeah.
So Mashiach should be here tomorrow, right? It's yes. I'm okay. So if Mashiach's not here, you give me $100. If Mashiach is here, I'll give you $100. Sure. And they're to be fair, when I did make the bet, I think they took it because they felt compelled to.
If you forced them into it. All right. Anyways, the point is that
money is where the real.
I don't remember the point I was trying to make here.
The point you're trying to make is who's listening, and then I said something about Chabad, and then you went to some.
Anyways, listen carefully, people. I know what I was going to say. Now I know what I was going to say. What I was going to say is as follows. If you look at anything in the world,
figure it out. That's it.
No, here's what I was trying to say. If you look at anything in the world that's actually real, that's a real accomplishment, you're not going to get a clear do this, don't do that, right? Because you know what? If it's that simple and that clear that you could be given it, then you're not really accomplishing much because anybody else could do it, right? Think about it. Zuckerberg didn't follow any person's advice when he created Facebook. Neither the guy that did Google, neither did any of the other people that actually made major. Neither did any of them anybody that made a major breakthrough. Was not handed it on the page. They had to figure it out.
In fact, most people were telling them, no, actually, don't do that.
Exactly.
You're crazy.
And I think that the Gemara is built to strengthen your ability to connect to God, by the way. Yes, and maybe even to other things. But even God, a lot of people are oh, God is simple. That's what I was trying to say. This lady, oh, God's so simple, I just figured it out, and that's that. No, it's not. The true definition of God, or the true understanding of what God is and what he wants from you, is not simple. It's perhaps even more complicated than creating Facebook from nothing, meaning before Facebook. Now you'd say, oh, Facebook, I could create Facebook. I'm sure we probably have some people here that know about computer programming, that I'm sure if they want, they can make Facebook today. But guess what? It's not going to get 2 billion users. It's not going to happen. Why? You already did it. The point is, if you want to make a breakthrough, you cannot just be asked to give you to hand it everything to you. And I think the Gemara is part of that, trying to develop you and getting you to be a better, more accurate truth seeker in a systematic way where you could actually reach a truth of that is beyond. So if you're going to go to Merkava and all these other websites, which might help you actually understand what the Gemara is saying, it might help you understand what the Gemara is saying, but will prevent you from accomplishing what the Gemara really wants to accomplish, which is to get you to understand it without hearing what they have to say, right? Because by doing that, you will enhance your ability to connect to God in a deeper way. Yeah, and that's why I say, and very often it works, just read it over. You ask me, what's the method? I'm going to give you the method. Read it over and over and over until you get it. When I tell you guys, write the translations over here and then read it and read it and read it, guys are like, I read it once, it's good enough. No. You should read it until you feel you mastered that page and you know each detail in each place without having to look it up on Merkava. Right? And even if you do look it up on the cover because you can't figure it out, but eventually you have to get back into the words and know it. I'll tell you, there's a few things in my life that I witnessed what I think is real magic. Real magic means not something natural. Okay? One is with tefillin. When I put on tefillin with people, I see crazy stories with them. Right? You wrap a guy with tefillin, all something change. When I was on shlichus, if I met a guy, I asked him to put on tefillin. If he put on tefillin, I knew he was going to become more connected to Yiddishkeit. If he didn't, he wouldn't. And each time I was right. If the guy refused to put on tefillin, it was a battle. It was an uphill battle. I don't know. I see a magic in tefillin. Another magic is in Gemara. People that learn Gemara and they know how to learn Gemara, you see their life changes in a 180 degrees, completely. If once you get involved and you start learning Gemara, you'll enjoy it, you'll appreciate it. But there's, what do they have call it in America, the rite of passage. You know what the rite of passage is?
Grind.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, to get to that point, you have to you're gonna grind. And part of grinding is to read it again and again. Yaakov, I know you're looking at me. You're like, I'm looking for the easy way out. I'd rather just look on my cover and this and that. No, read it. And if you don't understand it, you know what you should do? Read it again. And if you don't understand it, you know what you should do? Read it again. You had a question. I just no, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah.
I thought you wanted to ask something.
You're talking about you're talking about the, like, in art school, you're talking about, like, the interpretation.
What?
Like
Yeah.
that, where art scroll, like, they just highlight the questions and the
Right.
answers to make it easier so you know when
Right,
to
but
transition.
after, again, if you want to use this so that you should understand it the first time, fine. But
Right.
eventually, you need to be able to
Yeah.
read it
Yeah.
without that. You need to turn off all those color coding, all that stuff.
Right.
Turn it off and read it until you understand it in the actual pages of the Gemara, because there's magic there. I'm telling you, there's magic there, right? And if you know me, I'm an intellectual type of guy. I'm not a superstitious guy. Right?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, ask my wife every time she comes up with some superstitious thing. I'm like, they take this oil and they rub it on your foot and your headache goes away.
Take some salt, put it all over the house.
It's possible.
Are we having shared thought today?
Huh?
Are we having shared thought today?
Yeah. Bezrat Hashem. The class, guys, I want to remind you, the class is going to end now. I want to remind you, please do me a favor and do yourself a favor. Read it and again and again and again. All right. This Thursday, unfortunately, I won't be able to be here Thursday because I have something that I have to go to. I have to tell you all my private business.
No, I said, oh no.
Oh, I thought you said, why not? Huh? To do. From Avad. To do this. Huh? Usually Thursday is the test. We might do it on Sunday, but that's that. All right. Kenai Nahara. Anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. If you don't have any questions, don't ask. And if you're online and you want to ask a question, you just put it in any of the comments of any of the many platforms that you're on. We actually have a very big crowd here today. I feel bad I'm closing the thing. Wow, look at this. You get the most on it. Look at that. You have the Maha. Who's the Maha node? It's you?
Yeah, it's an account. It's not really. It's getting shut down soon.
Yeah.
It's getting shut down.
A bit confused
was trying to find the live stream.
On Facebook.
You live stream with us this. And this.
Yeah.
But not on YTV.
The YTD doesn't have an X. We do on YTD. On the Y.
We have
do on
different
the-
ones. Anyways, good. We're going to close it. Have a good day. Thanks for joining
No,
us.
this is on Rabbi Kopel.
If you want, by the way, if you want to join, anybody online, if you want to join our WhatsApp group, I just put on the line, you have a QR code right there, and you can join our WhatsApp group. I will leave it on for another few seconds, and then I'm going to close it down. What? So yeah, this stream is on my personal YouTube. Intellectual Spirituality is the name of the channel.
But it gets reposted
And,
to a Facebook group. That's
yeah.
the YTD class group.
He said it was a problem if you do it to two different
You
groups.
stream the exact same content to multiple destinations
Yeah.
on one platform, the algorithm kills it.